Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 277 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. What's up this morning, Richard?
Hey Seth, lots of news.
We do. We have a pretty busy cast, lots of big topics to talk about, but before we get into all that, we have another co-host in Krim. What's up today, Krim?
Morning, Seth. A big, fairly one of the biggest tournaments we've had recently, with tons of decks. So pretty excited to talk about that.
Yeah. So our overview for today, we have 3 or 4 kind of big topics. We had today's BNR announcement, which was pretty interesting. We got some new promos and LGS focused news for Paper Magic that was announced today. CommandFest Onlines were announced a few days ago, and this massive Red Bull tournament that was held over the weekend. So those are our main topics. And then, of course, answering your fish mail. But before we get into all that, a reminder that our show today is once again brought to you by Spikes Academy. And Spikes Academy recently launched a new control course with Corey Burkhart. So if you like to make your opponent's lives miserable with counter spells and card advantage, this is a course for you. You can check it out now at spikesacademy.com and learn from the best players in the world. So thank you so much to Spikes Academy for supporting the podcast. And let's talk some Magic. Let's start with this morning's big announcement. People were waiting with bated breath since last week to see what would happen with the BNR. So, Richard, what changes do we actually get with today's BNR announcement?
All right, effective immediately. Dranith Magistrate and Winota Joiner of Forces banned in Brawl. That's it, baby.
Magic is fixed. We're good.
That's
good
May 21st, Brawl. But the real juice. Legacy, Luris of the Dream Den, banned. Zerda, the Dawn Waker, banned. And Vintage, Luris is banned. So first, power level banning in Vintage. And then Legacy, 2 companions down. Modern Pioneer, no changes. There was not a scheduled announcement for them today.
So the first companion dominoes seem to be falling a little bit in older formats. Luris was a really obvious one. Like when they announced last week that they were making changes to Legacy and Vintage, everyone knew that the minimum was Luris was getting banned. There was just, there wasn't even any debate. I didn't see anyone, which is surprising with BNR announcements, arguing the other side, like, oh, Luris really should stay in Vintage or Legacy. It was just like 100% of people were like, okay, this has to happen. There was some question as to whether they take even stronger action, like, in errata or banned his companion or banning all the companions. Obviously, we didn't get that. We did get Zerda, which is kind of interesting to me. I haven't played much Legacy recently, but Zerda is one of the 5 most played decks in the format, and based on Wizards' justification, they seem to think that with Luris out of the way, Zerda will probably kind of take over even more. So they're kind of like with Reflector Mage and Standard. They're trying to set things up for what they think the future metagame is going to look like a little bit. So, what do you think? Are you happy with these changes? Obviously Luris had to go, but is this enough?
First off, what deck is Zerda even played in for Legacy though?
So
I don't know.
So in Legacy, you have access to Basalt Monolith and Grim Monolith to combo with Zerda and make infinite mana. So there's it's called Zerda Bomberman, I think is the actual name of the deck, but it's kind of like a red-white artifact combo deck looking to use the infinite mana combo.
Okay, yeah, I do know that, but that's only because of Commander. I can see how that's pretty broken. I can see where that becomes a problem, and very quickly. Luris, not surprised. I mean, the older the format, Luris just gets better, right? I mean, we have so many things, especially when you go into Legacy and Vintage, that are under two or less mana. So that and having it just constantly happen over and over, I can't even begin to imagine how broken Luris is.
Yeah, I don't know. People have been waiting for the Luris ban. The question is, will a new companion pop up and shift the metagame with Luris out of the way? Wizards is hoping no. They hit Zerda as a precautionary tale. There is a very interesting line in the announcement, which I think we should highlight, which at the end of the article, they say, if we see signs of long-term health issues resulting from high metagame share of companion decks, we're willing to take steps up to or including changing how the companion mechanic works. So,
whoa.
To continue the last line, for now, metagames need time to evolve before we can determine whether changes are necessary. Am I completely cynical to read that as we're going to make systemic changes to the companion mechanic, but we need to sell Ikoria cards first. Like, when I read that sentence, that's exactly like, we know that you guys want this gone. We know that some changes need to happen, but we gotta wait a little bit longer because Ikoria just released on Friday. And we really, like, come on, guys. Like, we're in a pandemic. We really gotta sell some Magic cards. So just chill, hang out with us for a couple more months. And we'll, when M21 releases, then we'll take care of this for you.
That's too cynical. I mean, they just banned like a whole bunch of cards. I think they want to see what the metagame does. And like, I believe what will happen is if Lures goes and then the next companion pops up in every single deck, I think they're going to be like, okay, this is too much, right? We're going to stop playing Whack-A-Mole and we'll do something with the mechanic itself. But I don't think it's sales related because Standard is untouched, right? Modern and Pioneer is untouched as well. It's only Legacy and Vintage. So I believe their sales numbers will continue because Standard is just fine with companions. So I actually think they want more data.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, once again, like the whole thing is I don't even know, like, legitimately, is this gonna have to happen in Standard? Like, I'm reading into it and like I'm wondering, like, I like the companions in Standard, so I'm reading that last line and it's just like making me wonder, like, man, are they gonna change companions in Standard? I don't want that to happen. Maybe I'm the only person that doesn't want it to happen, but I like the companions in Standard.
Yeah, that's a good point though, right? If they change the rules to make Vintage work for whatever reason, that affects Standard, right? Like, for example, you don't start with an extra card, right? Like, it counts as one of the cards in your hands or something like that. That would affect Standard, which is why I doubt they would do this. I would see a blanket ban in like Vintage and Legacy before they start messing with the mechanic, I think.
Really? Like, do you think that would... So, Krim, back to what you were saying. Like, what if the change was... if you reveal your companion, you start with a 6-card hand instead of 7-card hands or something like it. Would that like ruin companions for you? Or do you think it would still, they would still see play in Standard?
I guess they would still see play, but like I don't know. I mean, the companions they haven't broken Standard to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I understand the older formats, but like, it actually is fun, right? Like, and I've really enjoyed, we kind of touched upon it, like I think last week, and that we have something to do always, right? Like, there's always something for us to cast, in the event that we get flooded. And in worst case scenario, okay, whatever, just play my companion, right? I don't feel like I should have to go down to 6 cards. I've enjoyed having the 8th card. I don't even hate it when my opponent has the 8th card, right? And
you dirty companion player, you.
I don't know. Maybe it's just, it feels weird because I finally settled into Standard where I think I found a deck that I like. I don't even mind all the shenanigans that are going on in Standard. It's the older formats where I think the companions really are the issue, but, and once again, it is a little confusing, like how if a card has some weird errata or change to the mechanic in an older format, but not it, like, that's not across the board, right? I do think that is very weird. I don't like the sound of that, so I'd rather them just, I don't know. I could also understand that people don't want to wait until rotation, right? Like, some people don't want to wait till rotation to, like, stop playing against Yorion decks and stuff like that because the games just take too long or something. But, I don't know. I don't even know how you fix it, though, because I like companions, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know how you do that because I think a change, like an errata or a nerf or something like that, should happen across the board and not in just like some formats.
Yeah, like any rule change, even if the reminder text is still technically correct, if it doesn't encompass the entire mechanic, it's effectively an errata change, right? Like, for example, if you go down to 6 cards, like the reminder text is still correct, but the rule did change, and you're gonna have people super confused in paper tournaments. So I
really
don't.
Though? Like,
yes,
we've had so many rule changes though, like legend rule changes, and now all of a sudden, like, your stuff doesn't deal to damage to planeswalkers the same, and this and that. Like, there's probably 20 rules changes just to make mutate actually function legally, like in a game of Magic. So,
but those are necessary, right? Like, okay, so when you change a legend rule, you know you can create waves in Magic, but that is for the entirety of the game going forward, right? Do we really need to salvage the companion mechanic? Like, just ban it in Vintage and Legacy and call it a day, right? Like, why do we need to kind of affect the entire player base for this short-lived mechanic? Right? Unless they're making this evergreen or something, like, yes, right? Like the legendary rule change is big, right? Like the mulligan rules are big, or, I don't know if you want to count like weird edge cases and like how layers work or something and life gain, but like, those are really edge casey. But these ones, like, is it worth sacrificing clarity of the game for like companion mechanic for like 4 months or something, right? Or 6 months.
But what about, so we've talked about like standard and we talked about legacy and vintage. What about the between formats that are arguably way more important than legacy or vintage? Maybe not as important as standard, but like, what about modern and pioneer? What do you do there?
Ban them. I'm surprised. Okay. I'm salty that there was no changes to modern or Pioneer. Maybe they're waiting until next week. Like they announced last week that it was only for Vintage and Legacy, so we knew it was not happening. But like Modern is all messed up. Like they're gonna do anything about it? I don't know, right? But I think like a blanket ban.
Is Modern really all that messed up though? I mean, like, this might. I know that I had said the older the format and like it does get more broken with like Lurrus, right? So like Mishra's Bobble just happening over and over is a problem. Yes. But like at the same time, Lurrus is not exact. Like there's so many different archetypes under Lurrus, right? Like, I mean, there's Grixis Lurrus Control. There's Lurrus Burn. There's Lurrus, you know what I mean? Like just because there's a Lurrus in the deck and like that's the companion that you see doesn't necessarily mean that that's the deck. I think it is, especially as we get into Modern, when you think about how broken some stuff is, like getting turn 2 tightened, you know what I mean?
I think my concern would be like, right now we have Lurrus at like 42% of decks are Lurrus decks according to our numbers that we have, which let's just round it up and say 50-50. Like if you sit down to play a Modern League, you're going to play 2 or 3 matches against some form of Lurrus decks. Is that okay for right now? Probably, but from the perspective of the next 5 years, like, do you want to see Lurrus literally half of the matches you play in Modern for the next 5 years or 10 years? That's where I'm like, no, like, sure, like, maybe it's fun and novel for right now, but after 6 months or a year or 2 years of just, oh, it's Lurrus, oh, it's Lurrus and Bobble, it's Lurrus and Bobble, it's Lurrus and Bobble every other match, like, I would probably just blow my brains out and like play Hearthstone or something. Like, I think that would be pretty bad.
Okay. Lurrus and Bobble happening over and over, all the clicking and waiting, right? Like, I can understand the agony, but like, like at the same time, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that are still around in Modern that I would be pretty tired of. I mean, maybe they do something to the cards after a year or so. You know what I mean? But I think for right now, it's fine. I haven't been annoyed by it, and I'm still in love with Pioneer. So I think that Lurrus actually adds some depth to a good amount of the decks where like it may seem like, okay, well, like, okay, sure, what, they just reoccur their, like, I don't know, their creatures again, their 1-drops all over again. But like I enjoy the lines of play that have come from Lurrus and the different types of decks that have spawned underneath Lurrus. I do think it's pretty cool right now. Maybe after a year they can ban it or something, but for right now, while Ikoria is kind of like, in rotation, I think it's okay to leave it in Modern. I think it's okay to leave it in Pioneer. And I definitely think it's okay in Standard. Maybe after it leaves Standard, then ban it as a whole, I guess, if you need to. But also, there's a chance that, like, what happens if in 2 years, not even, let's say, what happens if in the next set, something new just comes out and blows out all companions, right? It's just like...
We've invented the one CMC Planeswalker now. Everyone gets a Deathrite Shaman. Who needs companions?
Everybody joked about 2 Fairy, but then now, like, it's actually real, right? Like, who knows, right? Like the thing is, I obviously think that I could see the concerns about down the line and, like, the long-term, like, play of Magic, but for right now, it seems to be okay. And with the way things are going, I'm pretty sure things are going to correct itself, right? I mean... I'm starting to see where Veil of Summer kind of fit into the meta that they played tested.
What? Okay.
And I hate that
Okay.
card.
We're going too far here, Chris.
I hate that
We're going
card,
too
okay?
far here.
I hate that card.
I don't know how you make an extra card in hand bad though. Like it's not like, oh, it's a whatever, it's a planeswalker and you can print a pithing needle or something, or like, oh, it's a creature and you can print a fatal push. It's just an extra card in your hand that you can't like. What do you print a mechanic where you get 2 extra cards in your hand, like Mega Mechanic or Mega Companion, and you can start with like 2 partner companions,
honestly,
and then you don't play the original ones anymore.
I'll give you the mechanic, which is the pattern of Modern, right? It is you go turn 2 win with a combo, right? Like 4 drops are laughable in Modern because you never make it a turn 4, right? But now you don't even play them in your deck as Aluris, right? So the way to fix this is you just go like turn 2 combo, turn 1 combo wins, right? Like you don't like, you don't want to go there. So like just printing this just further invalidates any like, Bloodbraid Elf type cards that you try to pull back the game with a mid-range strategy. Like that's not happening. So you just go, balls to the walls aggro or balls to the walls combo and then get there before your opponent does, which is what Modern is. And before Companions, we complained about this, right? Like the good old days of Fair Magic and Splinter Twin and whatever. Like, no, we just keep going faster and faster and faster. Like
Modern will never be Fair Magic again though, right? Like I just feel like that could never happen. So Luris and things like that kind of make it so that
Luris is the Fair Magic currently, right?
Is the Fair Magic deck, right? Like,
yeah, we just don't like this this Fair Magic, but it is the actual I'm grinding you out with card advantage, and we're just playing 2 drops.
Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't like sitting there and watching people click through their bobbles, but to be honest with you, play to your outs, which I joked about, is actually real now because there's a chance they might even time out. But the thing here is,
oh boy.
But the thing here is, I would rather lose to that and like watch that every day of the week than, I don't know, getting like the ridiculousness that is, all that is Modern, right? I mean, like there's so much in Modern like that I could lose to that's way worse. Like, I won't even lie to you, like, at least thanks to the Luris matches, I don't have to see Tron anymore, right? Like, I mean, like, I see Tron, but, like, it's not to the levels that it was, right? Like, London Mulligan, aw, darn, they always have their 7 mana, right? But, like, at this point now, like, why would they play that? They could just play a 3 mana threat that, like, Path to Exile, I don't know, I hope I can deal with, or Graveyard Hate has always been good in Modern, so it just continues to get better.
I think I would say the difference is, like, sure, is losing to Luris worse than getting Primeval Titaned or Troned on turn 2 or turn 3? No. But Luris is currently 42% of decks when Amulet Titan, even when it's the best deck in the format, is like 7, or Tron is like 10 or something. Like, it's the diversity issue, I think, where every game already, to me, has started to feel the same due to some rule changes. And now having the companion show up game after game after game makes Magic feel even more samey. Like, now every matchup feels the same. like every matchup is Bobble and Luris, and we do the same thing.
But like, is it the same though? Because yes, on the top of it is, yes, it is a Luris deck, right? But what about actually underneath that? Like, if you remove the Luris part, what archetype is it actually, right? There's Burn, there's Jund. You know what I mean? I don't wanna like, I'm not gonna lie to you here. I'm a little bit happy and I've got my Nicol Bolas Foam Finger that I can't play because it's over 2 mana. But the thing here is Grixis, baby. like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty excited that, like, dude, Grixis is like good. I can play a Grixis control deck. And when you look at all of that, like, it's under the, like, umbrella, like, of Luris, but really it is a bunch of different archetypes.
I don't know. For me, the diversity, I get what you're saying, and I agree that, like, underneath there is diversity, but just from, like, a gut level reaction, when you see your opponent reveal Lurrus every other game when you play a Modern League, it doesn't feel diverse. It feels way less diverse than it actually is if you want to dig down and be like, oh, it's so many different archetypes. But when every other game on turn 3, it's Lurrus, draw an extra card with Bobble. Can I kill it or do they win the game? And then you do that again the next game. Like, it feels less diverse than the archetypes would suggest to me, I think, just from like my gut level feeling about the format when I play it.
Yeah, I think it's just the ability to play new cards, right? Like if you're slotted into Lurrus, the highest permanent you can play is like 2 CMC. Like every set that releases in the future, like unless they like print a super Tarmogoyf, like you just have no new cards. Like everything is unplayable because you need Lurrus. So I think it restricts what they make in the future, and like it just furthers power creep, right? Like the only creatures you'll ever play now are creatures better than Monastery Swiftsphere, better than Tarmogoyf, better than Death Shadow. Like that's it, right? Like if you print a 3 CMC, I don't know, 10/10 Trampler, oh, we can't play that. Can't fit into a Lurrus deck, right? Like, oh, not worth it, right? Like you're like, what? Right? Or, like Hazoret. Like just think of all these, I'm biased, think of all these great Jund 4-drops that you'll never see ever again. Kalitas, Pia, Chandra. Oh, Chandra's fine. No, Chandra's not fine. Like all these cards that they print throughout the years that you could slot in. Now just you can't, right? So I don't know. I just don't like the deck diversity part of it. But I think metagame wise, I think Krim is correct, right? There's actually a lot of diversity. But it does feel the same across different formats though, right? If I sit down, I'm like, I'm sick of Standard. I don't want to see, Lurrus again, go into Modern. I'm like, Lurrus again, huh? Go into Pioneer. Lurrus Burn again, huh? Like it's a little awkward.
I think it's just the feel bads, right? Like, I mean, it feels a lot like, cause like, Lurrus is just what you see. So you just immediately like, okay, well, that's the only thing I see consistently, right? But that it's like,
it's also because it's Burn. Like everyone hates losing to Burn, and like now Burn is like top of the meta with Lurrus. So they're like, oh my God, please.
Yeah. I maybe that's like, it's a lot like why like Stoneforge and Jace, right? Oh man, good thing Modern ended when Jace got unbanned. Like
it did end for me, Crib.
Okay.
Mid-range was never the same again.
Okay, Richard. Sure. Like I just don't know why those were like banned after a certain point, right? People wanted those cards unbanned, but I think the reason why it never got off the list for a while was because of the recent burn and feel bad of when it was in Standard, right? I genuinely think that it's because of the taste that it left in people's mouths after it was in Standard. And obviously in older formats, it's ridiculously powerful, but like they were only like 1 to 2 ofs, right? They weren't really that bad. And I think that eventually Lurrus and all of that, with the way cards are being made and whatnot, I don't know if this is a concern or not, but like with the way things are going, I may think that companions, the next set, next two sets. I know Seth said that there's not very many things that you can print to punish the 8th card, but what if it were like the companion zone, right? So the companion zone, what if they just change it to where, like, if there is a rule change, I don't even know if this is it currently, true currently, but is it not in the exile zone? If not, can it be in an exiled zone? Because then what you do is you make a card that allows you to play cards from your opponent's exile zone.
So you want more Agent of Treacheries?
Look, hey.
We'll put it on a Planeswalker.
Yeah, put it on a put it on Teferi.
Two fairy, and he'll let you steal your opponent's companion, cast it for free.
Yeah. Then now don't you feel like you thought everything being at sorcery speed was annoying? Check this out. I'm also gonna take your companion, and then you can't play things at instant speed.
And then you'll just play Teferis and Baubles in your deck. Like you don't even have lures. You just rely on taking other people's lures.
But that's where you metagame. And you're like, you know what? Imagine this, in a world, one person willing to queue up without a companion.
All right, I will say that every week we say short cast and then we start talking about companions and like half a podcast later, we're here. And if that is not a sign for like there's something wrong with this mechanic, right? Or maybe not wrong, controversial. But we keep talking about companions every week, and every week we change our minds, and every week there's something new to complain about. Like maybe
I
for that
still
reason
like
alone, they should
companions.
axe it.
I don't think me or Krim have changed their minds. I have consistently thought it was the worst mechanic of all time, and Krim has pretty consistently liked them. I think you're the swing vote, Richard. You're the one that week to week goes
Richard,
back and forth and decides
There's
where we land.
pros and cons to the
We're
card.
staring at you right now.
There's pros and
Which
cons.
side are you on?
The side of the Reddit pitchforks, which will always win.
All right,
Who yells the loudest gets the final word, right?
Grixis is viable in Modern, Richard.
we should actually probably talk about our other topics though. We'll have another half hour next week to catch up on the latest.
Okay,
companion
Wizards, we're gonna
news.
keep doing this till you ban companions. If you want a lifelong podcast on companions.
Please
All right.
don't.
All right, so in non-companion news this week, Wizards today announced their Love Your LGS promotion, which sounds really cool. Richard, will you give us the TLDR of what this promotion is?
All right. We're getting new promo cards. So basically, there's some rules for stores. So for example, any store is able to sell products on or after the weekend of June 5th. And we're not setting an end date right now, so that's an example date. Will receive promos and art prints for their players to go along with the previous mystery boosters. So we have two new promo cards. We have a Reliquary Tower, and we have a Hangerback Walker that's actually Mechagodzilla Battle Fortress. So another Godzilla card from a non-Ikoria card. So Mechagodzilla Battle Fortress is Hangerback Walker. So those are the two promos, and then a poster of Vivian shooting some scary monster. So that's the Love Your LGS promo that's coming up soon.
I love these promos. Oh man, Mechagodzilla, Hangerback Walker, like that's perfect. That is perfect. Now that is a Mechagodzilla, right? Like that's how, like if I were to pick a Mechagodzilla in Standard, I think Hangerback might have to be one of those things. Now the Reliquary Tower, I just love a different art, but it kind of looks like a gigantic sandcastle.
It does.
Like look at it and tell me that it doesn't just look like a gigantic sandcastle. I am excited for the promos. I am curious as how all this is gonna work with everything. You know what I mean? Like in what parts of the world is gonna start opening up, and who knows? So there's gonna be all of that. But if I'm just talking about the promos, I love it. I think the promos are really cool. I guess another Reliquary Tower doesn't hurt. I mean, I've got enough EDH decks to play, all the artworks, and I, as I said, I enjoy multiple arts, so I'm a huge fan. And just the vibe of Hangerback Walker as Mechagodzilla is perfect. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I also really like the promos. I mean, I'm still kind of whatever. The Godzilla thing isn't for me, but Hangerback is a really good choice. If you're going to Godzilla up a card from like Modern and Pioneer, Mechagodzilla being Hangerback is pretty on point. Reliquary Tower, it gets reprinted a ton, but it's still relatively expensive because everyone needs a copy in like every commander deck, so that is another good choice. I think Hangerback's close to $10 right now, so another nice free promo, like that is a nice bonus. And the other thing they kind of announced alongside this was, I believe they're giving out $10 million of mystery boosters to WPN stores, which that's a pretty big amount. And local game stores are hurting right now. I mean, a lot of businesses are hurting, but paper game stores in specific are definitely bearing the brunt of this. You can't have pre-release, you can't sell products. So it's really nice that Wizards is taking a pretty meaningful step to try to, almost like the government sent out stimulus checks to everyone. This is like Wizards sending out stimulus to local game stores to try to help them through this time. Like the promos will hopefully get people in the shop. $10 million of mystery boosters being sent out will hopefully provide financial stimulus, and maybe that'll keep some local game stores that are like on the brink right now with everything that's going on, able to, stay in business and keep serving their communities. So
I'm going to disagree with you guys. So I like the promotion itself, right? Because the promotion itself is meant for you to support your local game store. So that's awesome. But the choice of Mechagodzilla, I think, is really, really bad, because when you think of Mechagodzilla, do you think of a 1/1? Usually a 0/0 that like makes a Thopter that's left behind. Like what? Like that's not Mechagodzilla, right? And the thing is, here's the card. The card is super awkward. The card name, if you just read it, is Mechagodzilla Battle Fortress, right? But then when you start reading the card, it says Hangerback Walker enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. Like, it's just super confusing. Like for a card to reference its own name, but then not be the primary name on the card. Like, could they not have chosen a different card where it works better? So I actually dislike this Mechagodzilla. But Hangerback Walker as a promo itself is fine. And the promo is awesome. Or the promotion for the stores.
In spirit, it makes sense though, right? Because every time you see a walking ballista, it's never just as simple. It can be a 1/1, sure, right? If we're just talking like, like modern and whatnot, I don't think I've ever seen a fair walking ballista just go and be okay. It's usually going to involve some infinite combo where I instantly die, and then, you know what I mean? Like,
in which Mechagodzilla never becomes greater than a 2/2. Like, it's not
you
big.
have a hardened scales. You have a hardened scales, Richard. So you're good to go. That's what makes it big. I think on the name thing, though, I will say I think that's just like. I dislike that, but I think that's because the cards have two names. Like, I don't think that's unique to Hangerback. I think, like, several of the Ikoria cards are the same. Like, Brokos refers to itself. The uncommons, like Titanith Rex, the Yadaro, Godzilla Doom Inevitable refers to itself. So that naming issue is actually something that I think that just comes with having two names on a Magic card. And I don't really like the two name thing personally, but I don't know if that's actually avoidable if you're going to print cards with two names.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wording on it is a bit weird, and I guess, okay, the only thing that would have been better than Mechagodzilla, I think, is Walking Ballista.
What about something that's actually big? What would be something that's valuable and artifacty and also just because if there is one
Wormcoil?
Or
Wormcoil would
Wormcoil.
be interesting.
Yeah, Wormcoil would be nice.
Because there's definitely been some complaints recently about Ikoria not actually having big creatures. I don't know if you've seen that, like, on social media and Reddit, people talking about, like, oh, it was supposed to be a big creature set, and, like, we don't actually have that many creatures that are that big. So I think that's, like, a legitimate piece of feedback, just because the mutate mechanic doesn't actually make creatures big. So maybe Richard's right to some extent that we need a bigger Godzilla. Although I think Hangerback is a good choice, like, value wise.
Yeah. Well, I think Ballista probably would have been the one that I'd really be like, okay, that's perfect, right? Like, that's perfect.
I'd even take like a Solemn. I'd take Sad Robot.
Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Solemn?
I'll take Solemn.
Over Hangerback?
I mean,
come on.
I think the other problem is if it's a creature that costs more than 2 mana, it's not playable in any format anymore. So they probably had to go with something like Hangerback just so you could actually play your promo somewhere in some format while Lurrus is legal.
I actually read that. So companions are the face card of Ikoria, but none of the Godzilla cards are on it. So Wizards should have made companions with Godzilla counterparts, and then we'd see Godzilla everywhere in standard, which would actually be pretty sweet. But alas, for here,
Ghidorah would have been Grixis. I agree. Yeah.
And then, so the only thing I have to add to the $10 million mystery boosters. So it started off 5, and then they're going to double it to 10 million. But we need to hit some milestones, and basically, stores need to run and promote a Magic event, either via webcam or Magic Arena, or promote and accept Ikoria pre-sales online. So they're trying to boost sales, but stores have to do this. What's interesting is Magic Online is left out of this equation. You cannot run a Magic Online tournament to meet the requirements for this. So no Pioneer, no Modern. You got to do it via webcam.
Yeah.
Is that not the death of Magic Online, if you've ever heard it or not? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They've been doing like the F&M Online thing, and I don't think it's really like made a huge difference. I'm assuming this is just like a short-term transitional thing. So it'd be nice if Moto was included, but to me, it doesn't like especially freak me out about Magic Online.
But with the big push for Commander on Magic Online, Seth.
Speaking of Commander, that is our next topic that we had. They announced CommandFest Online, which, speaking of Moto kind of getting the short end of the stick, rather than having people play Commander on Moto, which actually probably would be a horrible idea based on like half of our games crashing over the last couple months, they're doing a CommandFest Online over webcams on June 6th. They're streaming on Twitch. It's using this site called Spell Table, which I'm not really familiar with, but it's I think a new-ish site designed to let you play Magic over your webcam, kind of capture your playmat and send it to the other players. What do you guys think of CommandFest Online?
So it's free with a suggested donation. So anyone is free to participate. They also have CommandFest in a box where you can just buy like all the promos that you would normally get at CommandFest. That it just comes to you. But the main event itself, I think is pretty sweet. It's a way for people to play Commander. It's probably a big boon to Spell Table. So I imagine the biggest problem today is finding opponents. Right. So on June 6th, there will be plenty of opponents. So you'll be able to find a play group online, and then hopefully those play groups stick together, or it becomes a more common thing. So you'll be able to hop into a game whenever you want. And the queue will always fire, and then you can keep playing Commander during this time of quarantine.
I do miss playing Commander, and especially with my paper cards. So I do think that's really cool that they're gonna kind of like give us that the paper magic of Commander, because I really don't. I'm happy they did not try to put this on Moto, right? Like, I mean, it would look kind of weird, and it would probably crash a lot, and lag a lot.
That is true. Moto Commander has not been in the best place recently, but hopefully they will be making some improvements like they've talked about. I think for CommanderFest Online, I like that they're doing it, although I am a little bit skeptical of how it'll run in practice. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I think if you're a professional streamer or content producer and you're used to like webcams and you have a good internet connection, it'll probably go okay. But just like random person with like potato-y camera and bad internet connection where no one can see your board, like I'm a little bit curious if like thousands of people are going to be able to have the right technology to be able to pull this off smoothly. I still think they should be doing it, but I'm a little nervous that there might be some disastrous games where you just like can't see your opponent's battlefield because their connection's so bad or whatever.
Well, we also test your faith in the human race. Like when we play with friends, like you're probably not going to cheat, but if you're playing online, like will people cheat? Right?
Is there a reason to cheat though? Like, is there anything?
Is there ever a reason to cheat, Krim? Like ever?
Yeah, I guess that's also true.
Right?
But like. But like there's nothing online, right? Like there's nothing on the line that you don't get any prizes.
Your pride, so right? But
come on. I guess
I don't know, right? But so if you're interested, I think EDH Rec had an article about like cards that don't work too well in this format. So obviously things that need to like look at your opponent's decks and things like that, you probably shouldn't play because it's like impossible to do. But yeah, I think we'll see how it goes. We'll see. We're going to test how honest Magic players are and how technologically savvy they are. They can set up their webcam and stream everything and make it work and lighting and all that. But it is an interesting experiment. But it is a cool opportunity. It's a cool opportunity to play with like your favorite streamers and things like that. So I think it's pretty cool that they're trying it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, definitely a cool idea and a cool way to try to keep people connected, I think, and keep paper Magic relevant during all this quarantine time and stuff. So, all right, one more topic before we get to fish mail that we should probably hit kind of briefly because we talked about companions for so long. We had a massive tournament this weekend. Red Bull Untapped International Qualifier #1. There was over 4,000 people, I believe, that played this standard Magic Arena event. So what do we learn about standard or about the event itself this weekend with Red Bull Untapped?
There were a lot of decks. Like there were some pretty interesting ones that kind of like might have just recently you might have started hearing about it, but like there was a mono white deck, a mono white Luris deck. There's a lot of, there was also a lot of Jeskai Luca. I think apparently it was a crazy high number of the meta, right?
Yeah, so we got over like 2,000 deck lists, and 18% were Jeskai Luca, 12% were Jeskai Cycling, 10% Temur Reclamation. And then basically, if you just look at the Goldfish metagame page, it like follows that because this event like highly influenced it with the number of deck lists. But Jeskai is just all over the place. Companions all over the place. Reclamation is the only deck.
Rogrin.
Yes, Rogrin.
Rogrin cycling. Rogrin Luca.
Also, from the numbers we've seen, the win percentage with the Jeskai Luka deck has been consistently very high, like 60 to like even 65%. So if there's any deck in Standard I'm a little concerned about, it's probably that one. Although a lot of different decks did perform well. Obviously, companions are dominating, but as Krim mentioned, there was a couple of like super budget decks that went 7-1 to qualify. The mono white Lurrus deck is $35 a paper and only has 6 rares and no mythics on Arena. And the mono red deck with Abash is also like $30 in paper and has no mythics, although a few more rares in paper. So there are some new-ish wild card light decks for players to maybe try out on the ladder on Arena. I think that was my biggest takeaway from the tournament. Is there is some like kind of like with cycling and mono red and this new mono white deck, there are a lot of budget friendly options for Arena players right now, which is good.
Yeah. Like I never thought I'd imagine that. Like when we've got tri-lands and all this other stuff, that there could just be. What if we just played a monocolored deck? And you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, that's the whole point, right? Stone Coil Serpent is like carrying the deck on its back.
Oh.
It's basically hexproof.
Stone Coil Steve Austin is the truth. That card. I can't tell you how many games where I just go, well, we're good here. We've got crazy advantage. We've got everything set up, and they just play Stone Coil as a 5/5 or even a 3/3. I'm like, I have 0 ways to kill that, like, or interact with that card, like outside of using a sweeper. And so I've often found that Stone Coil Steve Austin is killing me right now. Like, oh man, but legitimately, some of these decks they just look like a draft pile, like solid footing. 4 of?
This is what happens when you make boggles, man. You play suspicious looking enchantments.
Dude, somebody played that when I tried to go and like I finally found an answer, and it was a Scorching Dragonfire on a 3/3 Serpent, and they pumped it, and I'm like, oh dude, what draft card is this? I was blown out.
I will say that it blows my mind that Agent of Treachery is the literal most played creature in that tournament. 29% of decks are Agent of Treachery decks. Has there ever been a standard like that where like this random 7-drop is just like dominating the most played creature in the format? Like when I saw Agent of Treachery, I was like, oh, that'll probably be fun with like Panharmonicon. Like I'll probably play that in some like janky Panharmonicon deck. Probably good in Commander. Like that's the epitome of remember when we used to like see a 7-drop? We'd be like, oh, that's probably good in Commander. Who would have thought that Agent of Treachery would be the most played creature in Standard? I don't think I can ever remember a Standard where this random 7-drop was so dominant.
Emrakul, Promised End.
but
Aetherworks Marvel decks, right? Basically decks that cheat mana. We had Nissa to help us. You know, Krim's much loved Nissa to help us in previous Standard, and now we have Luca, right? So we don't cast these things, or you know, we have enough value to drag the game long enough to actually cast it. So yeah, I think when we evaluate cards nowadays, the big scary CMCs don't matter as much because we have ways to cheat mana, like between mana doublers, planeswalkers, fires of invention. There's plenty of ways to cheat mana now in Standard.
Yeah. Maybe they could just like stop. Sorry. Like making ramp, like growth spiral at instant speed. Like legitimately that is an issue, right? Like the ramp right now is just absurd. Like it is ridiculous.
I do think that is I've had a few people ask me like if Agent of Treachery should be banned, and given current Standard, like I can see where they're coming from, but I would really hate for people to get the perception that like a random 7-mana 2/3 is like actually a problematic card, because like Agent of Treachery is the kind of card that I think would normally be very safe. It's all the other cards around it that I think are making it feel so overpowered in our current standard. So I would hate for them to like never print Agent of Treachery style cards again because of this, because I don't think Agent of Treachery is really the problem. It just happens to be the best thing to Luca and Uro and Grow Spiral and Nissa and Wilderness Reclamation and name any other ridiculous ramp spell, into in our current format.
Yeah, like, honestly, there could have been something else, right? Maybe it just also feels bad because Agent just steals people's things, right? And it is pretty backbreaking, and when, they do it on like turn 4 or something like that. But like,
yeah, Winota too. I forgot about Winota. That's another like semi-popular way to cheat into play. So yeah, I can see why people hate it, but I don't think it's actually a problematic card. I think it just happens to be really good with like a ton of push cards in our current format.
Dude, lands are so 2019. Who needs to pay full cost for any of their cards? After you just rattled that list off, it's like, okay, every single deck in standard like does not fairly pay their mana cost. Yeah. Except for Mono White Lurrus. Mono White Lurrus does it the fair way.
Mono White Lurrus is just honest magic. Just some good old honest magic.
Boggles. The epitome of honest magic.
All right, let's get some fish mail before we wrap things up today. Richard, take it away.
All right, if you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. Real Tap Water. Why aren't companions more expensive? Everyone's saying you have to play one. Will they spike if there's no ban?
Oh, I mean, I am a little worried, but I think the thing that's nice about it is that, as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, is that there are tons of archetypes underneath the face of Lurrus, but because of that, you'll still have a deck. So I guess I think it's a safe pickup for some of them. They're not that expensive anymore, right? Like Lurrus is like $9.
Yeah, Lurrus is the most expensive, and it's like $9 or $10, and the other ones are cheaper than that. I think price-wise, I don't expect them to go super crazy because of the one-of thing. Like, that by itself means a Lurrus has like 1/4 of the demand as something like Teferi, which is almost always a 4 of, and also a rare, and also 3 mana. So I think that is the biggest reason. If you could play 4 copies of something like Lurrus, I would expect it to be more like Teferi prices, where you'd be talking about Lurrus being, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, whatever ridiculous amount of money Teferi was at its peak. So I think that's really what keeps it in check, is just the fact that you really only do need one of them.
And it's not too bad if like they just do away with the mechanic, right? Because I mean, it's not like burn goes away. I mean, burn will still exist in some capacity.
I would be skeptical of buying into decks that were not really decks before Lurrus was around, or like lower tier 3 decks, unless you're okay with it going back to being like a lower tier 3 deck. But like the SRAM Auras deck maybe would be an example in Pioneer, where that was kind of like floating on the fringes, and then it became like the best deck in the format. A deck like Burn, though, like Burn is always a legitimate deck, so even if they ban Lurrus, your deck's still going to be fine. It's not going to be as good, but everyone else's deck is getting weaker too, because half the people are playing Lurrus, so everyone's dealing with the same issue. So I would just avoid those decks that like are built exclusive. Like Garuda maybe is a good example. If Garuda gets banned, all those cards are going to go back to not doing anything because they are only played with Garuda. But when a Lurrus burn deck or something, you're probably fine to buy that, even if Lurrus does get banned.
All right, next question. Only way. What is the appropriate mana cost for an instant that reads card name deals damage to each opponent equal to the amount of mana they spent this turn? This is like Price of Progress. Like 2? I mean, I don't think it'd be very good. Actually, no, it'll be really good in Standard.
Yeah, it would be good in Standard. I think it would have to be more than 2. It might have to be Zenith Flare? Yeah, maybe like 4. Like if Zenith Flare can do what Zenith Flare does, that's probably fine at 4, I guess.
Because I'm imagining the case where someone spends like 12 mana and dies, but like even if it just deals 5 damage on turn 5 or whatever, it's still pretty good, right? So you do have to cost it.
Maybe it's just because of my I have a little bit of a disdain, I guess, towards ramp decks. I want it to be 3 mana, and I think you should do more than 1 damage per. I just wanted to kill them as soon as they spend their mana.
Okay, yes. That's what I was going to ask. Wouldn't that just be 3 mana, kill a ramp player? But that's what you're going for,
exactly.
Actually.
That is correct, Seth. You are correct. 3 mana, just kill a ramp player. Oh, and then if they cheated their spells into play, they also just lose the game.
How could you word that? Like something about like for every card that entered the battlefield, or no, for every spell put on the stack, deal damage equal to CMC minus mana spent or something, and they're like sneak and show omniscience, and you're like, you're dead. Right?
Should be an enchantment.
Deal damage equal to the like combined converted mana cost of all spells target player casts this turn or something like that.
Oh, that'd be pretty good.
Ooh, yeah, that would be sweet.
Oh, that'd be pretty good.
Oh man, because yeah, we had talked about it last week, right? There's nothing that makes a ramp player think about like, oh, I mean, is it like you had mentioned, Richard? Oh, is this the turn I need to actually accelerate my mana? Because what if I get punished, right? Like there is no punish.
That would also give Fires players too, which would be a bonus. Like you can't just like, oh, Fires, free thing, because you're not even like tapping your lands. But if you worded it that way, you would also hit on Fires.
Yeah. For 3 mana, so it's fine.
I mean,
it's colorless.
I feel this is like Veil of Summer.
It's just straight up colorless.
There's like no counterplay the other way. Like the Fires players like, what am I going to do with this card? Right? I'm dead no matter what.
Oh, even better. It's a cycling card, and you cycle it to do it. So
can't be countered.
Yeah.
All right, DJ Jono B, how is Richard doing? Every episode Seth asks him and he always deflects it back. Hope he's not hiding some deep emotional scarring. Sounds like a good bloke. Yeah, ever since Thoughtseize became ineffective, my life has been in shambles.
Richard never really came back.
My jubilance is tied to the success of Tarmogoyf in non-lure decks.
Ooh, Richard, you've been gone for a few years.
I've been gone. I've been an empty shell for like 5 years, guys. But yeah, I don't know. I'm doing well. Billy 320 Hogak and Oko were banned since it had a high percentage of decks played in meta warping that was difficult to beat. Companions are heavily played in meta warping. Is it harder or easier to beat companion decks than Hogak or Oko?
So I think that you have to say companions are a lot different than that and probably easier. Like, none of the companions are, I win the game on turn 2 like Hogak was. I think Oko is maybe a better comparison where a card like Lurrus runs away with the game if you don't kill it immediately on turn 3. So I think Oko is a pretty fair comparison for Lurrus, but I don't think any of the companions are like Hogak, because Hogak was just so fast and hard to disrupt.
Hogak was fine. You could beat it, but at what cost, right? Like, you could beat Hogak and then lose to everyone else, right?
Light of the Void was in the main deck, dude.
But that was not even enough, right? You needed like 4 ley lines and like 2 relics or something to like actually get it done. And then a clock, right? Because that alone would not beat it, right?
Yeah.
So it's slightly different. It was metagame warping in different ways. Like Hogak, you could beat it, but it cost you too much. Oko is pretty similar, but Oko was not in every single deck. Right, Oko was like a deck or a group of decks, whereas companions like span the spectrum from burn to mid range to control to like what are you gonna do about this?
Yeah.
All right, last question. Joshua Braska. Mark Rosewater said Wizards doesn't have resources to test older / non-rotating formats. Seems to me the only 2 things you need are every Magic card in existence and people who played Magic. Which one of those 2 things does WotC not have? People who play Magic? It's not that they need people that play Magic. They need people to play this format and play enough games to get like sufficient sample and analysis. And they don't have the money to hire these people. I believe that is their argument, right?
That is my understanding of it too, is it would just be ridiculously expensive and cost so many man hours or whatever and need so many people that it's just not, financially viable to do that.
What do you think about a preview server? So a lot of games have like a beta server or a preview server where they release cards, or not cards, but they release whatever. People play it and then they balance it after. This like totally kills our preview season and how cards work in Magic. But if you could play with companions now on a test server, and then Wizards can decide whether or not to balance them or change them, 4 months from now.
Does that not kill the format for you a bit earlier though? Because if we're talking about like it's not even out yet, right? It would be like
it's killed in a week after release anyway. Like everything's known like a week after release anyway at this point, it feels like. So I don't know if it would change it that much. I think my concern would be the paper game. All these bright ideas, like, errata cards or nerfing cards or have this test server. I feel like it all comes down to the paper game because they have to work so far ahead to like physically print the cards and ship them to warehouses and distributors who ship them to local game stores. So I feel like it would be very hard to implement that model with paper Magic still being a thing.
Yeah. I mean, once again, like it is just so much easier when everything is like digital, right? Like if you could play a digital card game, that's perfect. Errata, problem solved, right? Done. But yeah, like Seth mentioned, because there's the paper half of Magic, something like a PTR server just feels not likely. And I do think that even though everything is known a week after the set, I do think something about like playing it before it's even out, before it's even like, pre-release. You know what I mean? Like we're talking like we get the set, 2 weeks now before release, but having it like 6 months before the release is like crazy.
Yeah, and I do want to say that this theoretical playtest team is not the answer because we have it for standard, right? And you see what standard is, and standard is a fraction of the cards, but they're not able to balance standard appropriately. So what leads us to believe that they can balance vintage or legacy or any of that, so that's an interesting point. So that's all the time we have for fish mail this week. Thank you to everyone who sent in fish mail. If you have questions, you can send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 277 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard, Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Spikes Academy for supporting the show. And we will be back next week to talk about whatever goes down in the world of Magic. So until then, have a wonderful week. And this is the crew signing out.